Hello, and welcome to another Low Spend Challenge update. I've been doing these updates about every 2 months, so I'm going to be going over all of our spending for May and June. And since we're halfway through the year, I'm going to give an update on the total amount spent in each of our categories. If you're interested in a more detailed recap of my spending in the earlier months, then I'll link those videos. And if you like this video and would like to see more updates, then please hit subscribe because I get into all the details of my family's finances every week. As a recap of our low spend challenge rules, our no spend categories are home decor and kitchen gadgets, restaurants, clothing and personal, books, and electronics. We can spend to pay our bills, so we have our mortgage, our car loan, student loans, and a retirement account loan. We also took out a loan to pay for our new roof, but it doesn't have payments or interest for a year. So instead of paying towards that loan, we are aggressively saving in our high yield savings account to have the full amount when the no interest period ends next April. It's really good that we've been doing this no spend challenge because the roof was an expense that was way more than we were expecting. We were practicing saving and not spending at the beginning of the year because my income was reduced due to unpaid maternity leave. We were getting pretty good at not spending in our no spend categories, so we just had to pull back a little bit more, and after 6 months, I think it's getting easier. I did have to unsubscribe from some emails to some of my favorite stores, and I also had to not go to the thrift store as often just to browse. It also helped that I returned to work almost full-time in these last 2 months, so I haven't had as much time to spend at home where I wanted to get out and do something like shopping. Okay, back to our necessary expenses. We have electricity, car insurance, internet, and now daycare. The other categories that we can spend on are our needs like car maintenance and gas, groceries, home maintenance, pets, health, gift, and baby for my daughter. In my other updates, I mentioned that I was having a bit of difficulty with overspending in my grocery category because I was buying a bit of junk food. I think I've been doing a bit better recently, but we'll see when I get into the numbers. Now, first of all, I always like to reiterate why we are doing this no spend challenge. I think having a goal or values helps to keep you on track and feel like you're working towards something better instead of just depriving yourself of the instant gratification of buying something that you want in the moment. So our main reason is to be financially secure and even financially independent. It's even more important since we've had our daughter last October. I want to be able to spend time with her and give her an enjoyable childhood. I also want to set her up for financial success as well. We need to pay off our debts and not take on any more so that we can reach our financial goals. Right now, cutting back on our spending is the best way that we can do that, which is why we are doing a low spend challenge this year. So I like to start with our necessary spending. I don't usually recap our debt payments in these updates or our fixed expenses, but since we're at the 6-month mark, I thought it'd be a good time to give an update on those. So in May, we paid $4,418.25 in debt payments. And in June, it was a little bit lower at $4,182.03. That's just a difference of paying my retirement account loan 3 times in May with the 3 paychecks and only 2 times in June. In the past 6 months, so since January 1st, we have paid $25,167.03 towards our debt, and that's just our minimums. We aren't adding any extra to our debt payments right now. So for our fixed expenses, and this includes daycare now, in May we paid $1,179.57, and in June we spent $1,288.73. So far this year, we've spent just over $4,000 on electricity, car insurance, internet, my Acorn subscription, and daycare. Now let's move on to our variable expenses, the fun part of the challenge, the spending that we can control. In May, for car, we spent just $26.62, and that was on a single tank of gas for me. In June, I also bought a tank of gas, and that time it cost $30.76. I've started driving a lot more now that I'm back at work, and it's a long commute, so I expect that I'm going to continue to be buying gas at least once a month. So far this year, we spent $1,369.40 on car and gas. A huge part of that was buying new tires for my car a couple months ago. Now, groceries. So, groceries are my problem area, as I mentioned before. And I think it's because this isn't a no spend category, and I'm not really good at sticking to a budget when it comes to grocery spending. It's interesting because we almost never waste any food. It's just if I buy more food, then I end up eating more food. We also don't consistently grocery shop. Sometimes we'll go a couple times a week, and other times we won't go for almost 3 weeks. At least I didn't go to the grocery outlet quite as much these last 2 months, and I think that was because I was at work most of the time and it's not on my route. I need to get better at meal planning and consistently grocery shopping, especially now that my daughter has started eating real food. We bought groceries 9 times in May and only 5 times in June, which was a significant decrease from the amount of times we went to a grocery store in the previous 2 months. In May, we spent $352.11, and in June, we spent just $147.73, bringing our total so far this year to $1,869.64. That looks like it's about $300 a month for 2 people. And what's interesting is that we buy probably 90% of our food as organic. So I think that if we were purchasing conventionally grown items, we could probably spend half of that. But it's very important to me that I purchase organic food, both for my family's health, but mainly for the environmental impact. So I think that spending about $300 a month on groceries is definitely worth it. So moving on to our home maintenance category, which has been pretty high so far this year. It was extra high in May when we had to buy a new pool filter and pump. So in May, we spent $3,912.31 on those items. In June, we spent an additional $123.10. And that was for some pool chemicals and the PVC pipe and stuff that we needed to install the pump and filter. This brought our total home spending for the year to $5,173.29. Our next spending category is for my daughter, and we didn't spend any money on her in May because her daycare costs are now accounted for in our fixed expenses. In June, we ended up spending $31.81 on some new summer clothes for her. That brings our total this year so far on spending for our daughter to $1,998.68. But honestly, the majority of that was at the beginning of the year for some of her hospital bills and the nursery renovation. So then we have pets. In May, we spent $55.55 on them. I have 2 rabbits, and they eat hay and pellets and fresh vegetables. So in May, we stocked up on hay, and I also bought them a bag of pellets. We were growing a lot of lettuce in our garden this year, so the rabbits had plenty of lettuce to eat, and they really enjoyed that. We didn't end up spending any money on them in June, and so far this year we spent $317.10, and most of that was on their vet visit in January. So for health, we spent a lot in May, and I'm only counting what we spent that was not covered by the FSA, although it is a little bit mixed in. So usually we get our health expenses reimbursed through the FSA. However, in May, there were 2 things that we haven't been able to get reimbursed yet, and one of them we won't be able to get reimbursed at all. So I had another hospital bill come in for my daughter's birth last year after I had paid the entirety of the hospital bills. And I don't know why this bill came in since I had reached my insurance out of pocket max, but I just ended up paying it instead of trying to deal with the insurance company and the hospital. But that wasn't able to get reimbursed from the FSA because it was last year's expenses and I had already spent all of my FSA money from last year. Even though the bill didn't come in until this year, it still falls under last year's expenses for the FSA. So in May, we spent $153.45. And in June, we were reimbursed $17.99, bringing our total spending in health to $135.46 so far this year. So moving on to gifts, we didn't spend anything in May, but in June it was my niece's birthday and Father's Day. So I spent $63.04. And that's all that we've spent on gifts so far this year. Finally, moving on to our no spend categories. Restaurants. Both in May and June, I got Chipotle. And both times it was because they offered me something free with a $5 purchase. So I bought chips and salsa both times. I don't know why the price was different, but in May it was $2.44, and in June it was $2.65. That brings our yearly restaurant spending to $43.15, which is pretty good. For clothing and personal, I didn't spend anything in May or June, leaving our total for the year at just $35.33. So finally, we have travel and entertainment, and this one is the one that we're doing the best with because in May we didn't spend any money, and in June we got a refund for a purchase that we made last year, bringing our total spent for this category to negative $39.50. So we're making money on that one. Soon I'm going to be going over our progress towards our financial goals so that I can see if this spending is on track. We need to keep our spending low so that we can hit our saving and debt payoff goals. Hit subscribe so that you don't miss that update. If you have any tips for sticking to a grocery budget, then let me know in the comments what works best for you. Thank you for being here.